Yeah, welcome this next session where we will present some landmark projects that our company is executing all over the world. And actually these are the projects that are the final action after what is decided on these kind of COP organizations where climate is evaluated, actions are determined, what should be done. And this is what we will show now are actually the actions that are being done in the world by our company. But before we go through those 4 projects that we will going to present, I'm first going to present you rapidly the company.
Jan de Nul is a Tier 1 marine contractor with expertise in dredging and offshore renewables, but also a civil construction business and an environmental solutions business.
We're reliable, we're to the point and very result-driven.
We distinguish ourselves by offering a total solution.
We are very focused on identifying problems but also solving them. And it's very rare that we take no for an answer.
It's very unique that all the knowledge is under one roof. We have experts in about every domain.
If it doesn't exist, we just make it.
We create the world of tomorrow by changing brownfields into new destinations.
By delivering results, we produce satisfied customers. We're one team and one big family.
And we have an impact on society with a responsibility for the next generations.
With everything we have, I'm convinced we're ready for the future.
At Jan de Nul, impossible is not possible.
So, Jan de Nul Group, rapidly going through what we are doing. Well, we are a company that is specialized in contracting, especially marine contracting. So we have a couple of divisions where under which we do separate activities. First of all, project development. So we are looking for projects worldwide where we can then apply our techniques from the other departments. Marine services mainly regarding construction of port facilities or other marine facilities. So a lot of dredging is involved. So we have a lot of vessels dredging all over the world. Offshore services, well, we can build, let's say, an offshore wind farm for you. We can build pipelines. We can build the electricity cables under the sea, which are needed for these infrastructure. The 4th department is civil construction, classical civil construction. We do all complicated activities over there. And then the last one, circular solution, is taking care of much times we find contaminated soils, both in our dredging activities and our civil construction, which need a cleanup. And that department takes care of that and often then transforms these new lands into nature or other new activities. Just to give you an idea about the activities or the project that we then have, we do onshore wind, solar power, up to hydrogen we are working on. Offshore wind farms, as I already said, so we build both the foundations, the turbines and the cables of the wind farms. Waste to energy. In some cases we were taking care of waste and transform this into new energy. And further on, concessions on waterways, infrastructure projects all over, and real estate development. We're working worldwide. Annually we're working in between 40 and 50 countries, more than 200 projects with about 7,200 people in the whole company. Financially, company is quite healthy, and especially if you look at the order book, which is now above 9 billion euros, that has been growing rapidly in the last couple of years, mainly due to projects related to energy transition. And even those projects, what we see now, that these are on long term, so some of our projects are already booked up to 2030. It's something unique that we did not see before. So a very healthy outlook if you look, thanks to the energy transition. Now, as I said, we're going to give you some examples for projects, landmark projects, that are giving an example of what we do and how this helps to realize actually the energy transition which is needed. First project is happening here at the moment in Abu Dhabi, in the Emirates, Lightning project, where we are working on an electrification of the offshore facilities of ADNOC. Second project in Ecuador, port of Guayaquil, where we are doing maintenance dredging over a long term, I think 25 years, and where we are transforming some of the core coast borders into mangrove habitats. Third project, or not rather a project, but it's something, it's our internal way towards a carbon-free operation. As we are operating with a lot of vessels, they still consume today classical fossil fuels. Over there, we're also looking how to go towards a fossil-free future. And then the last one, from pollution to power, is a project about a landfill, a former landfill, which was cleaned up and is now being transformed in an energy-generating place. And thanks to that green energy, we will be able also to create hydrogen. So now I go to the first project that I will present, Lightning project. Actually, in Abu Dhabi, it's a country which is known for its oil and gas, past and even today still. And that oil and gas production is actually one of the main creators of CO2 in the country. And we all know that we will still need oil and gas, although we would like to get rid of it soon, but it will take a lot of time. In the meantime, it still needs to be explored. Now, ADNOC was looking at how to get the exploration done with as less as CO2 production possible. And one of the projects is they want to electrify all their offshore infrastructure. And this project that we are working on, it's 2 cables, routes or systems that will be installed towards offshore islands from where several exploration points will be electrified. These 2 projects, these 2 systems will help to reduce the CO2 emission by 30% from ADNOC alone, which is quite impressive. So originally the electricity will come from 2 new renewable sources. One is the solar power from the desert, and the second one is a nuclear power, a new nuclear power plant in the more north of Abu Dhabi. Going quickly through first how the contract is set up. First of all, we have client ADNOC, who was actually looking for how can I electrify my solutions. And then they set up a holding company between ADNOC, a partner, local partner, TAQA, which is into the electricity business, and then a bidder which looked for the solution. And these are a quite international group, KEPCO from Korea, EDF from France, and Kyushu Electric Power from Japan. And they then looked for a contractor to build finally the system, which became then something for Jan de Nul together with Samsung. We are the EPC contractor in this project. What is the project actually about? Well, if on the map you see the coastline of Abu Dhabi, and then you see 2 islands, on the left Das Island and on the right Al Galan Island. And they're going to electrify those islands by 2 new cable systems. In total, it's more than 1,000 kilometers of cable altogether. And they will bring 3.2 gigawatts of green electricity towards the oil exploration. Total volume of the value of the project is more than $3 billion, so quite impressive if you look what they are trying to do. Going a little bit into detail, so how does it work? Well, you have onshore a normal grid on alternating current, AC grid, and there you will have on both landfall points a substation which will convert the AC into DC. Then you have cable systems bringing to the islands the DC electricity, where it will again be converted into AC system. On the 2 artificial islands that are in front of the coast. And they have chosen for both systems, a different approach in cables for some reasons. And just going into detail of this, if you look at the Zakum, which is the Algalan Island cluster, they're going to install 2 systems of cables. Why 2 systems? Well, for the redundancy reasons. First, that will be a cable system for 600 megawatt twice. So you have on both the landfall and the island 2 converter stations, 2 times 600 megawatt. And then the cables are classical cables plus 1 fiber optic cable for data and managing of the whole project. So a symmetric monopolar system, as they call it, with 320 kilovolt. On the other project, on the Das Island project, the system is different. It's a bipolar with a metallic return cable. So you have, again, a redundancy by 2 systems, 2 main cables, plus a fiber optic cable, twice, and then in the middle, 1 metallic return cable. So it's a little bit different technology, but in the end it's the same. But these are then for 1,000 megawatts, so 1 gigawatt per cable, so 2 gigawatts in total is possible. How are we going to do this? Well, as a company, we do marine works, as I said. We are mainly involved in the installation of the cables. Because it's such a big project, we cannot even do this alone. So cables are coming from one project from an Italian company, Prysmian, and they're also going to install that cable with their vessels, while we will be busy with the trenching of the cable and installation of rock on the cable to protect the cables. And on the coasts, we will have to do several trenching with dredging equipment, and that's mainly because it's very shallow water over here. So quite a lot of dredging work involved. That's maybe also why we were the right party to do this kind of work. Similar on the other system, but with the difference that over here we will install the cable with our vessels. Conclusion, well, Project Lightning is a significant environmental milestone for the Emirates to work towards a carbon neutrality. And it will reduce ADNOC's footprint by 30% for the offshore activities, and it will even enable them to reduce costs, because don't forget, when they electrify, it's not just the electricity or the energy that was needed is being replaced by cleaner energy, but you have to imagine that if you don't have this system, you have power groups running on diesel on those islands. The diesel has to be brought to the islands by boats, so it's not just the energy itself, it's also the whole logistics behind it, which will be reduced significantly. And ADNOC is already working, so that's the positive side, while this project is now under execution, so next year we start with the cable installations early in the year. ADNOC is already working to the next phases where they want to electrify, in the end, their whole offshore operations. So I think this is a very good example, at least, that technology will help in also their energy transition. We're going now to the next presentation by my colleague Vicky. She's lead engineer in our project development team, and she's going to talk about a specific project on mangrove habitats which we created in Ecuador.
So thank you very much, Carl. I would like to start with this photo. We see here land, we see the water, and Jan de Nul works at the interface. In fact, what we see here is a forest on the land part, and in fact this is a mangrove forest in Ecuador. So here we see a little bit better how mangrove trees look like. In the next 20 minutes, I will present you Aquaforest, which is a brand new project in Ecuador. And in this project, Jan de Nul Group is creating new mangrove ecosystems. But first of all, why mangroves? Jan de Nul has chosen mangroves for the Aquaforest project because they offer a long list of important ecosystem services. So for example, they offer socioeconomic benefits for the local communities. And they capture carbon and they purify the water because they act as filters. And they also play an important role in coastal protection and, of course, in biodiversity. In this presentation, I will focus only on a few of these important ecosystem services. So here you see again the same setup as in my opening slide. It's a little bit exaggerated, but we see here again the water, we see the land and the mangrove trees. Mangroves are able to protect the coastal areas from flooding and from extreme weather events. More specifically, mangroves, the trees, they have the ability to damp waves that are propagating towards the coast and storm surges, and they also have the ability to grow together with the sea level rise because they simply grow on sediment. So mangrove forests increase resilience of coastal areas. They are also very important, they have an important ability in capturing and storing carbon, which is the physical process that is known as carbon sequestration. So what we see here is that this is the carbon sequestration rate of various natural ecosystems, and mangroves are outperforming many of these natural systems. And this means that mangroves are ideal ecosystems for blue carbon credits and blue financing. And of course, mangroves are important biodiversity hotspots, attracting many, many species, both above and below the water surface. So by now we have seen why mangroves are so important for the local communities and for the environment. And this is the first reason why Jan de Nul Group has chosen mangroves for the Aquaforest project. The second reason is that mangrove trees grow very easily on sediment. And Jan de Nul works a lot with sediment. And this means that we don't have to look at dredged sediment as waste and dispose it at other locations far from our dredging activities. We can actually look at dredged material as a resource and reuse it in a circular and sustainable way to create new ecosystems. So dear ladies and gentlemen, this is how the Aquaforest idea was born within Jan de Nul Group. Now, the project is based on the concept of green-gray infrastructure, which means that we combine land reclamation using conventional engineering techniques in order to create a new substrate, a new landmass, which actually in this case it's a new island, on which new mangrove ecosystems will flourish. These mangrove habitats will be created through assisted afforestation, which means that we will plant a number of trees, but most importantly, our target is to create the initial conditions that are ideal for natural propagation and growth of mangrove seeds. This is an unprecedented project in the area. So Aquaforest will then become a living lab for nature-based solutions to demonstrate coastal protection, biodiversity gain, and even socioeconomic benefits for the local communities. Now, I would like to take you to the project area. First of all, why Ecuador? In 2019, Jan de Nul Group has started a 25-year contract for the maintenance dredging of the access channel to the ports of Guayaquil for Canal Marítimo and Canal Fluvial in the Guayas area more specifically. So for the aquaforest project, we have selected a tidal flat area, which is very close to the fishing village Pozorja, but it's most importantly, it's also very close to our dredging activities. The aquaforest mangroves are highly relevant for the region because in the past decades there has been a lot of loss of mangrove habitats, mainly because of the shrimp aquaculture activities, and it's a flood-prone area. So our approach to create this new island for the aquaforest project is mainly based on establishing these ideal conditions for mangroves to grow, these initial conditions. And this is something that Jan de Nul Group is doing through a suitable eco-engineering of the project site. And when we talk about initial conditions, we may refer to hydraulic and sediment conditions. So we will start by creating a U-shaped dike using soft material and by doing the right eco-engineering that is necessary. And by creating these initial conditions that are most favorable for mangrove growth, we will, both assisted and natural afforestation will start to take place. And this mangrove forest will eventually evolve into an autonomous mangrove habitat where no human intervention will be required anymore. So that's the idea. We also organize a lot of monitoring and research projects around the aquaforest mangrove habitats. So this is an example of the recently funded Wet Coast Monitoring Research Project. It has been funded by Flanders, by FLYO. And you see an example of the monitoring activities. And this specific Wet Coast project focuses on carbon sequestration. It's a collaboration between 3 universities from Antwerp, Brussels, and Leuven in Belgium. And more of these monitoring and research projects will follow in the future. At this point, I would also like to mention that the project is financially supported by the government of Flanders through the GSTIC Climate Action Program, by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, and more specifically by the Blue Natural Capital Financing Facility, and it's also actively supported by the local government and by local organizations that are there for the protection of mangroves. Aquaforest has also an international project consortium that is led by Jan de Nul Group. There are 3 universities in the consortium. One of them is the local Espol University. There are 3 other private companies and 1 local NGO, Calisur, which makes sure that the local communities are actively involved in the project. Aquaforest is also a very nice example of co-creation where Jan de Nul Group unites a large number of different stakeholders like public institutes, private companies, local communities, international organizations, NGOs, and universities and researchers. So Aquaforest will contribute in a number of SDGs. It is a unique, unprecedented project in the region. Aquaforest strengthens Jan de Nul's portfolio in offering innovative solutions to our clients. And Aquaforest strengthens our leadership in delivering nature-based solutions worldwide. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, this was my presentation. This was the story about how we create at Jan de Nul new ecosystems, new mangroves from dredged material. And at this point, I would like to show you a video about the project.
Our planet is struggling with climate change, and developing countries will be affected the most. The good news is that innovative solutions exist to face the challenges in front of us. Now we need to implement and scale them. That's why the GSTIC Climate Action Programme was launched, a project call funded by the government of Flanders. The programme accelerates innovation in countries most at risk, from renewable energy, sustainable water management to climate-resilient food systems. Let's discover one of the impactful stories.
Guayaquil has one of the most productive ecosystems, that is mangroves. They are the base of the ecosystem. Without the plants, there wouldn't be any life. When we talk about ecosystem services, the first thing that comes to mind is coastal protection. But also, these are excellent carbon sinks. The plant needs carbon in order to grow, so they are storing carbon. Over the last 100 years, it has changed a lot. Almost 60% of all mangroves are completely gone. Most of the coverage loss of mangroves is related to the shrimp farming expansion. With the reuse of dredged material, we can create the conditions for mangrove to be restored. We have now an area that has no mangrove. The idea with Jan de Nul Aquaforest and the project and all the other partners is to plant mangrove and then document, monitor, and see this restored process from zero. My name is Andrea Reyes Chejín. I'm a marine biologist from Ecuador. Right now I'm working at Spol University as a full-time teacher and researcher. Ecuador is a small country. Guayaquil is a big city. This is the main port. Right now we are within the Gulf of Guayaquil. So as you can tell, it's all covered by mangrove. We have huge forests, and the biodiversity associated with these mangroves is amazing. The root system of the mangroves, they act as nurseries for all the living organisms within the water. But also you have, for example, the interaction of mangroves with migratory birds. Most of the communities inside depend on this ecosystem. The main thing that comes to mind is the red crab fishery, and that's where the red crab lives. Within all the areas that are covered by mangroves, inside you're gonna see the shrimp farms as well. They need to remove the mangrove in order to develop the shrimp pools. So aquaculture is to mangrove what agriculture is to forests.
How they pump the water for the shrimp farm?
It's been documented and well documented how much it's gone.
Pues toda la tala de manglar que ha habido. No ha habido un control y eso es perjudicial porque ahora con los inviernos, con el Niño, va a haber mucho taponeado por tantas piscinas que han hecho los camaroneros, entonces ya no hay ese para que sostenga la corriente tanto de agua dulce.
My name is Dominique de Prins. I'm Senior Project Manager and in charge of all activities we have ongoing in Ecuador at the moment. The access channel to Guayaquil is by far the main gateway to Ecuador for all maritime cargo coming in and going out. 80% of the cargo in tons passes through the Guayaquil access channel. Our operations started in 2019 where we actually built the access channel so bigger ships can come in. Right now, the operations we have ongoing is maintenance, dredging. We saw that there are a lot of areas that are shallow and they are almost suitable for mangrove forests to start growing and start expanding. The only thing we need to make them suitable is elevate these areas a little bit. And what you need for that? Dredging material. We happen to have that because we have a dredging activity ongoing that needs to happen anyway.
So for us, the opportunity with Aquaforest is to actually have a demonstration project. The idea is to document, monitor, and see this restored process from zero. We're going to use it as a living lab for all the other interaction that comes with afforestation or with a restoration project.
The land reclamation itself is not new, but we're a little bit trying to replicate what nature would do itself in the long run, and we're trying to replicate it and to accelerate it in a much shorter time frame. That idea is new.
The idea is to generate either new sources of income, coastal protection from this, to have the benefit of clean air, clean water, clean soil.
Part of the preparatory phase of the project is to identify all these local communities, but also to hear them in advance and to know their opinion on the project.
¿Qué espera usted de un proyecto así?
El proyecto de Ecuafor es tan importante porque vamos a tener beneficio de vivir una vida saludable. Porque usted sabe que el ecosistema de los manglares trae un aire puro, entonces vamos a volver anteriormente como era.
The project at the end is for the local communities. But when we don't involve private sector, there's no way you can guarantee the sustainability of a project over time.
It's really amazing to think that we can use byproducts of these essential activities to undertake an innovative, sustainable and circular activity like adapting and adequating these areas for mangrove forestation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi. Hi. Now, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and hello to all those on YouTube. This afternoon, I'm going to talk a little bit about decarbonisation initiatives for next generation offshore wind vessels. So, we'll talk a little bit about vessels in transition and some of the lower carbon options that are happening at the moment. And then we'll look at Jan de Nul Group's approach to this, because we think we've got something that's quite special and innovative. Offshore wind is very much part of the energy transition, and it's the increase in growth. It's trying to grow like a tech industry, but as an infrastructure industry, it's struggling to do that. But as an industry, we want to develop offshore wind. We want to do it safely. We want to do it efficiently. And we want to do it with care for the environment. So, and we're into a new generation, and this cable lay vessel here, the Fleming Jenkins, is one of our latest vessels. It's in the shipyard at the moment. It's twice the size of anything that's available on the market at the moment, and this is an example of a next generation offshore wind vessel. So, and what do we mean by a next generation offshore wind vessel? This is a vessel that takes part in an offshore wind construction program, where the turbine size is about 12 megawatts or bigger. So roughly around 2019, the technology jumped. It went from turbines of about 9 megawatts to 12 and beyond. We're seeing 13 and 14 today. It's going to continue to increase. But the turbine drives all the components in the wind farm, so everything has got bigger. And that jump from 9 to 12 plus meant that probably 70–80% of the vessels working in offshore wind construction became obsolete almost overnight. So now we're working with custom designed vessels. Here's two examples here. Les Elise here on the left is a floating installation vessel, so it's like the size of a ferry with a huge crane, 5,000 tons, and that will install the heavier components. You can see it loaded with monopiles here. It's working in the German North Sea at the moment on Ørsted's Borkum Rifkin 3 and Goodwin project. And then on the right here, you've got the Voltaire. This is the tallest jack-up in the world. It's, again, custom designed to do these very large new turbines. It's working on the largest offshore wind farm in the world that's being constructed, Dogger Bank in the North Sea. It's being developed by SSE, Equinor and Vergron. And you can see it's got legs of 130 meters. This allows it to stand on the seabed, but if you have to bring it into a port where there's an airport near, you need special clearance. So you can't miss something like this. It's a remarkable piece of equipment. You'll see it from probably 20 kilometers away if you're approaching a port. So these are next generation installation vessels. And the other key thing about these vessels is that they're ultra low emission. So we'll come on to that in a second. Okay, so the International Maritime Organization is a special agency of the UN, and they track maritime matters for the United Nations. They had a meeting in June this year, and they were then plotting how the sector is going to decarbonize. So today, shipping or vessels is 2.3% of greenhouse gases. This will have to decarbonize by 2050. And if you look at the graph here, you can see that it doesn't really matter which path they take. It's a very sharp slope as we look to decarbonize. So really, we need to be started now, and we really need to push things here in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So customers and markets are also demanding this. There are a number of initiatives we're going to cover in a second. And another thing that will drive it, particularly in somewhere like Europe, is by 2028, vessel operators will have to pay for their 2027 emissions. And we think with the current scheme that this will cover probably about 50% of port trips in Europe itself. So it's going to affect a lot of people very quickly. Okay, so I think we'll move on. There's a picture here of some pollution with a vessel as well. So while we're dealing with carbon emissions, let's actually create clean air as well and do something about the pollution. So there's a list of things here that are the initiatives that are happening at the moment. I'll run through them quickly. I mean, they would take quite a lot of time to go through, but it'll give you a flavor of what's happening today, because people are doing things, but it's the transition. We're in a transition. This is not the final solution. As we get towards 2050, there will be different things that will come into this list. But first one on the list is just to use less energy. Okay, let's not make trips we don't need to make. And applying energy efficiency. So there's been a history of lots of vessels built with engines that are maybe too big for them. So let's right-size things and try and recover energy on the vessel itself. So you could see earlier Les Elysées there with this huge 5,000-ton crane. As we drop that crane, we will charge a battery pack that can then be used to stabilize the vessel when we're trying to hold a position. So rather than running two sets of engines, we can do it on one set and a battery. So we run it in a hybrid mode. So increasingly, this is what we're seeing for bigger vessels. Okay, other fuels that can be used in conventional vessels that largely drop into those vessels. You can have e-fuels, which are hydrocarbon fuels, but they're made with green electricity, so your carbon footprint on the fuel is lower. Hydrogen, we're seeing this in smaller vessels now, but probably for larger construction vessels, we won't see hydrogen just because we don't have the calorific output that we need for the operations that we undertake. Methanol and ammonia, if you want green methanol or green ammonia, you have to put a lot of energy in to create them, so your actual net saving is still quite low. So they are part of a transition, but we will need to move on from them eventually. Ammonia doesn't actually have any carbon in it, so this is maybe slightly better than methanol if you can do it. And I think for Jan de Nul Group, the most interesting one is biofuels and biodiesel. And that's what we're going to come on to on the next slide or two. So other things are electrification, if you can plug in a port, if you're a ferry particularly, or a large cruise liner that where there is enough power in the port to run the vessel on. This at least stops emissions in the port itself. But just like the wider electricity network, very few ports have enough power to actually power one of these large vessels. So we're looking at an onshore upgrade as well, which is probably going to take the best part of a decade. And really, to complete the list, we have nuclear. I mean, we run nuclear submarines today. The 5th and 6th generation nuclear engines are interesting, certainly for the bigger vessels. And we have bodies like the European Union who today would say that energy from nuclear has been decarbonized. So this is probably going to be part of the longer term future. But say we're in transition, they all have varying carbon footprints. Okay, so at Jan de Nul Group, since 2016, we've been building vessels that are ultra-low emission vessels. All our new vessels now, and particularly the large ones, but all are ultra-low emission vessels. And by ultra-low emission vessels, we mean a vessel with a conventional diesel engine. We use diesel because diesel is available all around the world. So we work all around the world, and we actually treat the emissions. So here you can see on the top right-hand corner here, you can see an engine, and with its emissions, we selectively catalytically reduce the nitrous oxides into atmospheric nitrogen and hydrogen. So this is almost the worst constituent here. And then and from a pollution perspective, it's the worst constituent. And then we apply a diesel particulate filter. So this is 1980s technology. The clever and the new thing here is applying it to a very large vessel. So in the 1980s, when people were building tunnels under the Alps, companies had to produce breathable air for workers, and this is the technology that they used. So this helps to particularly clean up the pollution. And this engine can also be run on second generation biodiesel. And we're going to look at that on the next slide. But there's the system. It fits on the vessel. There's a picture in the bottom right corner there of a test bed where we've developed this system. And it's something that is available today. So, and if we look at the results from an ultra-low emission vessel, again, from a pollution standpoint, the IMO produced a standard in 2020, which we didn't feel was quite strict enough. There was many constituents that were missing from that. So at Jan de Nul Group, we've aligned more with the Euro Stage 5 standard. So we can comfortably meet and beat that with an ultra-low emission vessel. And in fact, we think we can match and beat the Euro Stage 6. And if we can reduce the nitrous oxides down a little bit lower, we will certainly do that. And to do that, we just need to use slightly bigger equipment. It's a surface area effect for the nitrous oxide reduction. So for these vessels operating as a ULIF, if you could get them into the center of Paris or London, you would comply with the ultra-low emission zones. So, I mean, that is quite remarkable for such big, amazing pieces of equipment. So, but coming to emissions and the carbon footprint, so if you run these vessels on second generation biodiesel, so that's biodiesel that's produced from a non-food or a non-feed crop, so you're using forestry residues, animal wastes, cooking oil, anything you can get your hands on. So this is matter that has taken carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and we put it through the vessel, and put that carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere, so the net change is very small. And therefore you get this 80 to 90% fossil emissions reduction. So this is significant because it is available today. This is the press release we put out in 2020 when we'd run a vessel for 2,000 hours on second generation biodiesel, and we had an 85% carbon footprint or carbon emissions reduction. So it does work. And it is available to customers today. So I think, in summary, the technologies, it's not new, but it is available today. I think you will see more of it in the next 2 to 3 years, and hopefully we will do another trial next year, a much bigger trial, and put an engine through its paces to make sure it is achieving the reduction we say it does. With diesel or biodiesel, there is no methane slip. So methane has been very much in focus here at COP28. So there is no methane associated with diesel. And with other fuels, we have this methane slip. This is unmeasured release of methane into the atmosphere, something we have to get on top of and measure. And the vessels can be used in any water. So we can take them into inland waters, whatever you need. And I think just to finish off, I would say the request to governments would be, when you're letting new seabed licenses, please think about putting this into the conditions of the license, and let's use this technology. It's here, it's available today, and let's create more results and lower some emissions. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'll hand over to Anne.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy and also very proud to be here at COP28 to be able to tell you some of our transformational stories we have been working on lately. So within Jan de Nul, we have different activity lines, all dedicated to construct a better world, a greener future. And I'm in charge of the last but not least activity line, circular solutions. My name is Anne Smit, and apart from circular solutions, I'm also in charge of our hydrogen activities. So what do we mean by circular solutions for a better planet? What do? We will convert polluted sites into new destinations. New destinations that can be a power production plant, that can be a hub where people live, work, connect, that can be a green park. And always we will look and focus that we can reduce the CO2 footprint as much as possible and reuse the resources, so as much as possible circular. So we do this, we cleaning up polluted sites as well on land as on water. So I will give you some examples, and I will start with the title of my presentation, From Pollution to Power. So what you see at the left hand, it is a site that we took over about 10 years ago. And yes, it was really a disaster. It was a gypsum landfill of a fertilizer company that went bankrupt, and they left the landfill like this. So it was on the verge of collapsing, and you have to imagine there was more than 1 million cubes of polluted acidic water. So you can imagine how wrong it could have gone. But luckily, we were there, we took it over, we did a complete remediation, and we converted it in a solar park of, at that time, it was the biggest solar park in Belgium, 17 megawatt. So yes, here, first thing first, we started with the stabilization, we did the remediation. What we mean, we treated the acidic water, and then we put solar panels on top of it. But it doesn't stop there, because nowadays we are really going further, and we are adding additional wind, and even we are constructing a small hydrogen plant of 5 megawatt. I know you will say 5 megawatt, it's peanuts compared to all the big plants they are announcing here at COP28 or in the newspaper, but we are very happy with it. First of all, because it's real, it's happening, and secondly, for us, it really serves as a demo plant for other projects, bigger projects, the giga projects we are working on. So, another example of a transformation, that was a former coal plant in Belgium that we completely remediated it. And nowadays, we are building a state-of-the-art gas-fired power plant. So that power plant will be used to balance, because in Belgium we have a lot of wind and solar energy, but we need to balance it. So therefore, the need for this power facility. So we transform the polluted sites into power plants, but as I said, we also transform them in new cities. And this is an example that we did. Actually, it was a former car factory of Renault factory, and we did the cleaning up, and we did it in a very biological way and with a very low CO2 footprint. So we used bioparts to treat the pollution. Nowadays, it will be constructed in a new city with hospitals and schools. So this is another example, and what is interesting here is that we also built a heat network. So in the neighborhood, there is a waste-to-energy plant, and the heat from there we use to do the heating in the new city. Another example that I will skip, this is also an important one. It was a former gas and Coke's factory, and we remediated it, and now it's the headquarters of the post office in Belgium. So, as I said, the transformation can also be in a nature park, and this is what we also did from a dump site of sediments. We transformed it in a nature park. So, the core value in all what we do is innovation, and we innovate around two focus points. One is around the pollution itself, so how can we find new ways to do the depollution, and also how can we tackle new pollutants. On the other way, we are also looking how can we reduce our CO2 footprint, and how can we reduce our CO2 footprint and maximize the reuse of resources. So, innovation around new pollutants. I don't know if you have ever heard about PFAS, but PFAS is a very hot item in Europe. So PFAS, actually, it has long been considered as a miracle chemical because it makes things water repellent, also dust repellent, heat repellent. But lately it became clear that it was not a miracle, it's just very harmful, or it can be very harmful for our health. And it's used in a lot of things that we use daily, like your raincoat. Okay, here in Dubai you don't need a raincoat, but in Europe we do. And also in your frying pan. So we have been looking for solutions since a long time, and we have own proprietary technologies to tackle the PFAS and to solve it as well in the groundwater and in the soil. So innovation also, we are looking for new ways to tackle the pollution, and we are really focusing on nature-based solutions and also on biological solutions. So this is a little bit what also Norman was referring to. We also are looking to decarbonize our equipment. And we are working, for example, with a hydrogen-fueled excavator, and we are also electrifying one of our dredgers that we use in the port of Antwerp. So not only CO2 emission reduction, but also maximum reuse of resources. And this is actually also a very nice project where we reuse the sediments in the construction of a protection dike. And also, when we treat polluted soil, we wash it, and then we will reuse the material afterwards in all kinds of, for example, in concrete and things like this. So we are also working on other things, but I will not go in detail. So on water reuse, also on green concrete, also in recycling of wind turbines, and we are also doing some battery projects. So, as a conclusion, what do? We really always are looking to transform problems into new opportunities. We are looking to transform pollution into power. And why do we do it? Because we really think that it's necessary, if we really want to build a better world, a greener world, that it's really necessary that those kinds of projects where you take a problem and you make a new bright future, that we can do it all together. So I really hope that maybe it inspires you, and if we can help you to implement such projects, please contact us. Thank you so much.
And just to finish off, so we had a look exactly on what COP is all about over here, the COP28. It says unite, act and deliver. And I think what we try to do with our projects is exactly what we do. We unite with university institutes, with research, with local people. We act, and that's actually something where our company is good at. We do things and we deliver. And that's what the idea was, to showcase a little bit with those landmark projects. So, thank you.